I've got Taiwanese friends, and some of them have told me the only reason that I'm not dead is because I was a foreigner. My name's John, Canadian-born Kiwi. Been in Taiwan more than 25 years. Don't plan on living anywhere else. My dad was in the Navy, north of the Arctic Circle. Most of the places we lived didn't have phones, didn't have shops. Shot my first gun when I was 6 years old, down a garbage dump, shooting rats, you know. Used to go to school by a dog team. We got food by barge in the summer. In the winter, you can see it almost get dusk, and then it's dark. And then
there was no like seasonal depression.
Kids don't get depressed. It'd be 60 below zero, and they'd cancel school, so mom would say, go out and play. Well, if we wanted a night on the town, we did that Thursday night, because the military base had a theater, movie theater, but it was closed on Thursday. So we used to go down to the garbage dump and watch the polar bears. I was in high school. I worked part-time in a hospital. They brought in a couple kids that got mauled by polar bears. I hitchhiked across Canada when I was 17. I was in the States by the time I was 18. For the first few years, I lived to travel. When I ran out of money, I would say, hey, who pays the most money? And they say, oh, we need truck drivers. I'm a truck driver. So I've done high lead logging, worked on oil rigs, heavy equipment operating, got welding licenses, worked in the shipyard.
A oil rig like in the middle of the ocean?
Yeah.
Oil rig?
It was okay, except the guys are crazy. Macho, and everybody carried a knife, and I couldn't for the life of me, because near everything is cable, steel, and what have you. Right. So the only thing a knife would be used for would be something that's softer than metal. I know some of the jobs I did were really dangerous. I was logging 5 years, and I know 8 guys were killed. I did it because of the money, but once I got the money, I was out of it. I had been trying for a year to get a ship to Australia, to work on a ship. There were some issues with the police and what have you. My girlfriend was taking American servicemen, draft dodgers, going to Canada.
Really?
So I had enough money, I thought it was time to bake. So I phoned Pan Am. To this day, I have no idea why I said it. By the way, how much did it cost to go to New Zealand? $15 cheaper. And I went, oh, I'll go to New Zealand then. So I was there for 8 months, something, got married, and then later got a bachelor degree in New Zealand and a master degree in Australia.
So then you got your master's degree and then you came here?
I actually tried to get a job in Japan. ESL, teaching English, but
you
in
had
Japan.
a master's in education at that point, and it was still challenging to get a job there.
Well, my age, too old. In Japan, there's always a Japanese teacher in the classroom and then the foreigner. The foreigner is the assistant. You can't have the assistant older than the teacher.
By that point, you were in your
40s.
Gotcha.
You know how old I am?
60-something?
74.
Whoa, no idea.
To actually prepare myself for that, I was a volunteer ESL teacher for the New Zealand government. And they would allocate 1 or 2 families. And one of the families was from Taiwan, from Tainan. I tried for about a year, and they kept beautiful rejection letters. Tony said, John, you don't look too happy. He said, no, I'm bloody pissed off. He said, why? I said, well, now I'll have to go to China or Korea, and I really don't want to go to either of those. And he said, well, why don't you go to Taiwan? They'd love you. And I went, Taiwan? He said, yeah. Really? He said, yeah.
I mean, had you heard of Taiwan at that point?
Well, actually, it's funny. In 1967, I went to the World Exhibition in Montreal, and I was a Boy Scout, Queen Scout, and I met a Boy Scout troop from Taiwan. I had stuff made from beaver pelt, some bone, moose hide, and I swapped some of that stuff with these guys from the Boy Scouts of Formosa, and I still have those badges. I was a stamp collector, so I had stamps from China and ROC, so I knew that there was a difference, and I was a bit interested in politics and geography. So I knew a bit about it, so I went back to my office, I'm eating lunch, Dave's ESL. And man, there was like 1 zillion jobs. So I sent away inquiries for about 20. Thought, oh, well, I wonder what I'll... And next morning, ride back at work, sit down, have a coffee, turn on, 25 email. Yeah, when can you start? When can you start? When can you start? When can you start? I went, Jesus Christ, what's going on here?
Trying to take my kidneys?
And then that afternoon, a phone call from Taipei. And they phoned me the next day again, just to confirm my confirmation. And I said, look, I got to quit 3 jobs. I got to sell my airplanes.
Airplanes?
Yeah, I fly microlights. So I arrived here January 11th, midnight. That's why when people say, how long have you been here? I can actually calculate.
No.
I know how many hours, days. And I spent 10 days in Taipei, saw the sun for 1 hour. Went down to Huwei in Yunlin County. Next 6 weeks, brilliant sunshine every day. And I went, why in hell would anybody live in Taipei? 25 years later, I'm still asking the same question. When I arrived here, Chen Shui-bian was campaigning for president. One of my students, his father, was the chairman and creator of the 51st Club. They're trying to make Taiwan the 51st state of the U.S. And he was the one that got me on the road. He gave me the book, Formosa Betrayed. I learned about the 228. They had little flags, little plastic flag, Chen Shui-bian and Annette Liu. And I had those taped to my handlebars. Where I was heavy-duty KMT. And they'd be going by in a big convoy, and I'd go, DPP number 1, DPP number 1. But DPP doesn't mean anything to them, and number 1 doesn't mean anything because it's all in English. Every weekend I'd do a circular route, and I always went off the beaten track. I've made zones like 10 different ways. I got invited to about 100 weddings and sit at the head table in all these little wee villages and stuff. Got to see strippers at a wedding. I couldn't believe it. All of a sudden there were no females, and all the kids were gone. The next thing, they had the sound truck. Yeah. And then out they came, and they did the full strip, and I'm going, cool wedding. I remember they were redoing the roads. And so it was a mess. There was pipes exposed and drains exposed, and how the steel plate all over the place. And I was sitting outside on one of the roadside things, having a coffee or a Coke. And there's all this steam and mist and what have you. And this gorgeous Taiwan woman, she's wearing like a long Vietnam dress. And I was just mesmerized. I just watched her, and it's like she just floated through all this chaos and mess, and she just floated like a ghost. And I was just like, I love this place. In Taiwan, I've had hundreds of those. Well, I went down to Chiayi for a couple of years. I was here in the 9/21 earthquake. I've been in a lot of earthquakes in New Zealand, but nothing like that. It happened just after midnight. Lying in bed, earthquake came. I could see out the window, and like the wires are just going like this, and the poles are going like this. Stuff was falling down on the noise. I think I mentioned before, I was a government building inspector in New Zealand. After the earthquake, I hopped on my scooter, and for the next few months, tootled all around looking at buildings and all that kind of stuff. Took hundreds and hundreds of pictures. And you see all these 10-story buildings now, only 9-story. And then the worst is the schools. All the outside walls are just windows. So when the earthquake came, it came like that, and they just went one wall down, one down. Yeah, just dominoed down. There was nothing on the side, no lateral bracing. So the buildings went doing, doing, doing. So I think they're doing it a little bit different now. I taught it at the Environmental and Science Department at Chunglong University, trying to increase environmental awareness and the science behind it. And I was doing a TV show and missed one class.
You're doing a TV show here?
I've done 40.
40 about just your life?
Mostly my world's first schoolhouse made out of newspaper. But I didn't know it was going to become viral. BBC, Reuters, CNN. I got emails from South Africa, from South America, England. It's good because the seismic load, only 10% of a concrete, steel, and brick house. If you got a structure, it's really heavy, you get an earthquake on it, it shakes itself to death. You got a house made out of newspaper, earthquake goes boom. I'll be on the computer and people will be on Facebook. Oh, did you feel that? Shit, no, I didn't. I've had hundreds of engineers, interior designers, builders to my place, and they spent a couple of days with us. And then we did weekends, and schools would do school trips and summer camps and stuff like that. Gangsters threatened to kill me, but I mean, I'm not worried about that. They bought the land all around me. They had 20 pieces of land using illegally. They occupied a government road. Because everything they were doing was illegal, they didn't want anybody making an issue of that.
What kind of business were they running?
A stone factory. So, I mean, they built this humongous, they did one fence, and then I built a tower overlooking it. So they built another higher fence. So then I bought a drone. And all I did was collect more evidence, gave to environmental protection agencies here, NGOs and all that. One of the court cases I was involved in, the gangsters prosecuting lawyer was saying some stuff, and I've got copies of all the relevant government laws in English. And I was saying, well, look, here's what it says, and all I'm asking is that the law be applied. And the guy said, well, if you don't like it, you should leave.
You should go home.
Yeah, go home. And I stood up, maybe I was yelling even. I said, you have no idea. I said, I got more right to be here. You're only here because your mom and dad did the dirty in the backseat of some friggin' car, and so you're here for that.
Yeah.
I've been all over the world. I'm here because I want to be here. If anybody should leave, it should be you. You're a disgrace to your bloody service. And the judge is up there, young woman sort of smirking. Spent 10 years in court. They're still there. And I'm here. The gangs and the politicians are the same dudes. I've got Taiwanese friends that wouldn't endorse her and make any good comments about anything I complained about. And some of them have told me the only reason that I'm not dead is because I was a foreigner. Now I'm Taiwanese, but I'm a white Taiwanese, so to them I'm still a foreigner.
Do you think that's valid, or?
Yeah, I know some guys that got killed. Yeah.
So kind of galvanized you to start the process of becoming Taiwanese.
Yeah. Canceling the Canadian citizenship was a pain in the ass. Not from the Taiwan government, but from the Canadians. Jeez. Oh, they're just a pack of wankers. Jeez, they really are. Go to Canada, shit, I'm up, frisk me, may as well, hey, check. Oh, you got 3 testicles. Have you got a license for that? You renounce it, and then for 1 year, you're nothing. You're stateless. Yeah, you can't get out. You got no papers. And then the second thing is a language requirement. And my Mandarin, my 5-year-old Taiwanese granddaughter asked me to speak English instead of Mandarin because it's so bad. But in my case, I'm old enough that I just had to attend classes. The teacher had been teaching for 15 years. I was the first white person. And in the class, I was the only guy. So it was all Cambodian and Vietnamese, mail order brides. I voted 3 times. The first time I voted was the 10 referendums, and I had to go through all this stuff in Mandarin. Then I was registered in Ligan, little wee village, much, much smaller than here. And I get in line, and I was the youngest guy there by at least 10 years. Sort of shuffling along like this with a Vietnamese caregiver, sort of holding it. No, voting here is really neat. I voted in Canada, New Zealand, and now here.
Really? You didn't have to renounce New Zealand? Interesting.
Well, they didn't ask, and I didn't tell them. And if they had said, I would have said, yeah, okay. I'm more pleased to be Taiwanese
than the other nationalities.
The others, yeah. If I had to give up my right to live here, I'd fight for that. Some people say it's a real pain to have to give up their citizenship. I'm looking, hey, you want your cake and eat it too. If you're Taiwanese, but you keep your American citizen, and if China attacks you, you'll be on the first plane back to America? Yeah. Screw you, we don't need you. I know a heap of Taiwanese that if China attacks, they'll be on the first plane to wherever their second citizenship is. What I would say to the government, the day China attacks, close all the airports and only let out bona fides. Soldier-age guys that are American citizenship, but they're also Taiwanese, stick a uniform on them and put a gun in their hand, tell them to go kill some Chinese. When I read about what was happening in Hong Kong, I went over to Hong Kong and joined in the protests. Because I was sort of fighting the gangsters and politicians for so long, basically by myself, I really wanted to see what it'd feel like to be part of something. Like there was 1 million people going on those walks versus me. I was pretty sure my wife wouldn't be too keen on it, so I didn't even tell her. And so I got up 4 in the morning and zipped off to Pingdong and took the train to the airport, and then message from Hong Kong, I'll be back in 3 days, sort of thing. Because October 1st is CCP National Day or whatever. Got shot at, tear gassed, rubber bullet. I got the bullet. Yeah.
Did you actually get hit?
No, they missed me by, I heard it. And I'm sure they were just looking, hey, look at that goofy white guy.
Damn, you've lived a colorful life.
When I finished my last day in school in Canada, put my thumb out and the guy stops and picks me up. And he says, where are you going? And I said, oh, Australia. He said, I'm not going that far. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just looking for adventure. And 60 years later, still looking for adventure.